Welcome back to the Waynesburg Effect, and we have a special guest on the show today, and we are privileged to be joined by 2020 hopeful presidential candidate running for the Libertarian Party nomination, Sam Robb. Mr. Robb, thank you so much for joining
Thank you for having me.
Drew and I on this segment of the Waynesburg Effect. I'm going to give you the floor for the first couple of minutes here in this segment. Tell us about yourself, how you got here, what your goals are in this campaign, and basically about your campaign.
Well, my name is Sam Robb. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the reason that I'm running for president is because I was left unsupervised. I had to deal with my daughter's FAFSA forms, and I thought at that point, you know what, I bet you running for president would actually be easier than dealing with this. And it turns out that it was. So that was kind of a lark, but I've been talking about doing this for a number of years. I'd been joking about it, and I realized that the reason I was joking about it is because I was uncomfortable with the way the country was going. I didn't like the direction that the country's headed in, and as I talked to people, as I got to know people on the left and on the right and in the center, I realized that a lot of people were uncomfortable with it. And when you have that many people saying that we're going in the wrong direction, then I think it's time to change direction. So that's why I'm running for president. I want to change the direction the country's going in. I want to take us away from bigger government, more pervasive government interference in our life, and return back to a simpler time when we helped each other, when we watched out for our neighbors and our neighborhoods, and the government was something that you didn't deal with every day or have to worry about every day.
Drew?
Awesome. So you mentioned it. I hold the same belief that most Americans hold these libertarian values.
Yes.
They just don't realize it.
Absolutely.
So what's your plan, what's your view of the party as a whole, and what's sort of your plan to take libertarianism national and help people realize that, hey, this party holds a lot of the same values that I do, I just never knew about it?
That's a great question, and that's a big part of my campaign. Being a Republican, former Republican from basically a blue area around Pittsburgh, I got to know a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, and I never really quite felt like I fit in. And I think a lot of Americans fall into that. They say, oh yeah, I'm a Democrat, but there's something about the Democratic Party that they like, and there's things that they don't like. Or, oh, I'm a Republican, but you just have to ignore this stuff over here. A big part of the campaign this year, whether it's me or whether it's another candidate that wins the nomination, is going to be talking to those people and reaching out to them where they're at and talking to them about their problems, their concerns, and saying, hey, you know what? Government was the cause of these problems, and the solution is to get rid of government and increase our liberty and basically go back to where we used to be as a nation.
So Drew and I were doing some research prior to this interview about the Libertarian nomination process, and quite frankly, we got a little confused trying to figure out how the Libertarian Party does select its nominees. So to the best of your ability, can you describe to us and the viewers how the nomination process for the Libertarian Party works and how you plan to win it?
The nomination process is essentially one day, one vote down in Austin this year at the National Convention. Everything leading up to that, all the caucuses, all the primaries. I'm on the primary ballot in California, Massachusetts. There's some of us that are on the ballot in New York. All those primary processes are non-binding. All the caucuses are non-binding. Those are libertarian members in different states saying, hey, yeah, we like this guy. The delegates that actually get sent down to the convention are unbound. They can make whatever decision they want, which is in keeping with the libertarian idea of freedom, right? But really it's there to allow you to do something like, oh yeah, this guy's really, really popular. Oh my goodness, it turns out he's a complete cheeseball.
Yeah.
We don't want him.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody's bound. Everybody can make their decisions. So part of the libertarian nomination process is winning over the delegates. That's why I'm going to a lot of conventions. I'm visiting a lot of state conventions, doing a lot of affairs where I get to meet the libertarians who are going to be in Austin and going to be voting. I've become, I don't want to say popular, but my message is getting out. And as someone who's a relative newcomer to the party, that means that they're not paying attention to me as a person. They're paying attention to my message, which is exactly what I want. I'm hoping that message will get through to them, just like it's getting through to the Democrats, the Republicans, and the independents that I talked to on the campaign trail.
That's awesome. So you mentioned going to a bunch of these state conventions with the Libertarian Party, and I did notice that you got to meet Larry Sharp, and I'm a big fan of Larry Sharp.
He was an awesome man.
What was
Loved
that
it.
conversation like?
I had a couple of really short conversations with him. The one that was really good was just before we left California. My wife and I had a chance to say goodbye, thank him for being there, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's going to be the keynote speaker in Austin. But we were talking, he said, listen, what are you going to do if you don't get the nomination? And I told him, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm here. This is my party now. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to switch over to Libertarian and then I'm going to switch back or anything like that. This is my home, my political home. These are my people. And he said, that's fantastic. Think about the long term. You're setting yourself up for whatever the next race is, for whatever the next challenge is, for whatever the next opportunity is, which was fantastic. I mean, coming from someone who's been there, done that, he ran for governor, hearing him say, if things don't pan out, have a plan and keep moving forward. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm here. I'm going to be sticking around, and you'll probably see me running for something else, either in another 4 years for a re-election campaign, or maybe sometime sooner for something at the state level.
Okay.
We looked at your website, and
Okay.
congratulations, because your website is incredibly detailed, all kinds of different policy proposals and policy ideas, very, very specific, which impressed both of us. If you had to staple down one legislative idea or one piece of policy that embodies your campaign, what do you think it would be?
Wow. They always tell you should have 3 points.
Okay.
The 3 main points. My 3 are reduce the size of government, eliminate taxes, and reform immigration. Of those 3, I think the one that is closest to my heart is reform immigration. Especially traveling and talking to people. I can't begin to tell you how many immigrants that I've run into that I'm like, oh my goodness, I am so glad you are here. I am glad you're an American. You are exactly who we want in this country. You're a go-getter. You're starting your own business. You're running your own office. You're building your new life, and you love it. That's exactly who we want here. And I don't think I'm hitting an odd sampling here of just the really happy immigrants. The people who want to come to this country want to be here because they hear about America, they understand what we stand for, and they say, hey, I want some of that. I want freedom. And I think we really should give that to them. And to do that, we're going to have to reduce the size of government. We're going to have to stop taking their money, right? Cut taxes.
Awesome. So, having talked to other libertarians before, I know that a sticky point mainly for the party is campaign finance laws and ballot access laws.
Yes.
What's been your experience with that? And if you were to become president, what's your plan? How are you going to fix that?
I'm relatively hands-off or inexperienced with ballot access, being relatively new. I know that we're going to have, it looks like ballot access challenges in possibly New York. I know they're going on in Maryland right now. In Ohio as well, I think is possibly coming up. That's the sort of thing that really requires a lot of effort on part of the entire party and the party members in the state. Presidential campaign helps a lot, because if you've got somebody out there who is talking to people, who is introducing the ideas of libertarianism, when somebody calls on you and says, hey, we've got a petition that we'd like you to sign for the Libertarians to have ballot access, they go, oh, you're one of the guys with Sam Robb. Yeah, sure, I'll sign that. He's a cool dude. So a presidential campaign absolutely can help, especially if it's a strong one. And that's exactly what we're going to be going for. Campaign finance, I have worked hard actually to be self-funded and to not take contributions so that I have to deal with that, because it's a mess, it's a complete muddle, and frankly, I really don't want to have to sign my name to something that could get me thrown into jail unless I absolutely have to. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's the big reform that we need for campaign finance law, which is to kick Congress and say, hey, we need to simplify this so that you're not risking life, liberty, and property if you run a campaign or if you contribute to a campaign.
If you are to win the Libertarian nomination and then compete on a national scale for the 2020 election, what would be your strategy granted, you have so many disadvantages from a party standpoint from what you're facing with this two-party giant system going up against you. What's your strategy personally, and what's the strategy you think the party should take?
Strategy that I think the party should take, and the strategy that I would take, is to reach out to disaffected voters. You've got non-voters out there, like 50% or 60% of the population that just don't bother to vote because they don't care. They're apathetic. And some people talk about going after them. That's not going to work. They're apathetic. It takes a lot to get them fired up. On the other hand, particularly if you look at the Democratic Party right now, look at the returns from out of New Hampshire, right? Hillary Clinton was one of their most unfavorable candidates, and Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire with about a third less votes than she got. The Democrats right now are disgusted. They're unhappy. They want someone that reflects their values. They want someone who is pro-union. I'm pro-private union. I'll say that. We need smaller government, public sector unions. I'm not a fan of. But private unions, absolutely. I'm pro-union. I'm pro-labor. I'm pro-immigration, right? You start talking about the blue sections of the country, like around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where you've got a lot of hunters, you've got a lot of people who are into the Second Amendment. Hey, I'm pro-Second Amendment. The Libertarian Party is a home for them. The problem is reaching them and getting them to acknowledge that and getting them to change. That's a challenge, but that's something that I think that we can do definitely as a party, working together.
So this being a campus TV station, if you had to look at young voters right now and give them one reason or two or three reasons to vote for you, what would that be?
The way the country's going right now, if you look at the history of the Republican Party, if you look at the history of the Democrat Party is becoming increasingly socialist. They've got Bernie Sanders is their lead candidate right now. He is an open socialist. You've got folks in Congress that support him and that are backing him. And if you look at the history of the Republican Party lags the Democrats in terms of their policies by maybe 20 to 30 years. So in my lifetime, I expect that unless we change things, the Democrats and the Republicans are not going to be arguing over Medicare for all. They're going to be arguing about whether you should be allowed to keep some small portion of your money or if they should take everything in order to fund the government. That's where we're headed. If you're a young person, if you are in your 20s, if you're in your early 30s, and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to be raising a family, you need to start thinking right now, what kind of country do you want your children living in? Where are you going to be? Where are we going to be? And I think the answer needs to be not down that fork in the road. We need to return to a place where the economy can be great, where people can do what they want, and where we can live our lives the way that we want because we're Americans.
So I guess I'll give the floor to you at the end as well. Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to get out there from a campaign messaging standpoint, the floor is yours before we wrap this up.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate the opportunity. Two, from a campaign viewpoint, if you're interested, if your viewers are interested, I'd ask you to check out samrobb2020.com, samrobb with two B's, .2020.com. Take a look at my policies. Like you said, I've explained them in detail, some of the reasons why I'm proposing the things I do. The big thing that I would like to get out, I think, is to explain that a lot of times I hear from libertarians, especially more radical libertarians, oh, you're just talking about cutting government. You don't actually want. If I wanted to leave this room, the easiest way is through that door. There's any number of ways I could get out of here. I could crawl through the roof. I could tunnel through the floor. I could probably try and find a heating vent to crawl into. But the easiest way is to go out through that door. And it doesn't matter how far I go, I've got to go through that door. What we need to do as a country is go through that door. What we need to do as people is recognize that no matter where we're going to end up, whether that's in a place where we have remarkably little government like we did when the country was first founded, or we just returned to an era back in the 30s or 40s where the government was much less pervasive, we need to go through that door. and we need to start the journey, and we need to start the journey together. We can argue along the way, and it's fun to argue. We're libertarians. That's what we do, right? It's fun to argue about where we're going to stop, but let's at least start headed towards the destination. Let's get going, and let's make it happen in 2020. Let's get that trip going.
Mr. Robb, we can't thank you enough for joining us on the Waynesburg Effect. It's not every day we get to interview a 2020 presidential candidate, so we really appreciate you taking the time, driving down here, and coming on the show, and hopefully this helps get the message out to folks
I hope
that
so. Thank
watch
you very much.
Waynesburg University Television. Again, if you're interested in donating or checking out the Sam Robb campaign, it's samrobb2020.com. That's Sam Robb with 2 B's. We'll be back on the Waynesburg Effect.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.